Hi, I'm Paul Santinello, and welcome to The Upside. Today's episode, we're going to have a select board forum where we have the 4 candidates running for select board this year for 2 open seats on the board, or not open seats, but 2 seats on the board. And we're going to have a discussion with them, ask them some questions. You'll get to hear them, get to know them a little bit before Election Day. Election Day is June 3rd, and the poll is open from 7 to 8 p.m. at the Community House. So what we're going to do is open the statements for everybody, and then I'll ask a series of questions. So let me introduce the candidates. I'm going alphabetically. I have Maury, Garrett, Mark Gold, Shelly, Maynard-Dewolf, and Dan Zwirko. So we're going to start with Maury because we're going to that end of the table. So Maury, if you want to kick it off with your opening statement, talk to the folks.
Well, the first thing I want to do is thank LCTV and Paul for having us here today. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on here and talk to folks at home and talk to the people in Long Meadow, my friends, my neighbors, members of my community about why I'm running for select board and what I'm doing here. My name is Maury Garrett. I'm running for select board, election on June 3rd, as you heard. I've lived in Long Meadow since 2013, and one of the things that I've done since I moved here was start to dedicate myself to service to the community, and that's always been important to me. I am an attorney. I practice law in East Hartford, Connecticut. I have a degree from Rutgers Camden University in New Jersey. My undergrad degree is from Princeton University. That's actually where I met my wife. My wife Jackie's an allergist in West Springfield for Agape Allergy. And we have 3 children, all go to school here in Long Meadow. My oldest son, Maury, is attending Long Meadow High School. He's playing varsity football and lacrosse. He's a freshman playing varsity lacrosse and varsity football. Very proud of him. I have a younger son, Grant, who's attending Williams Middle School, and I had the pleasure of coaching him on our Long Meadow Intermediates baseball team. Intermediates is 12 and 13 youngsters there, and I have a daughter, Jillian, who is a dancer, and she plays field hockey for Long Meadow Youth as well as lacrosse for Long Meadow Youth, and she also attends Williams. Here in Long Meadow, it's not just the children in the schools. I also coach for football team. I coach the baseball team. I've coached basketball. I've coached since I've been here in Long Meadow. I coached 5 years of T-ball. And coaching has been a big part of my presence here in Long Meadow. I also serve as a member of the board for the Long Meadow football. I serve as our league representative for the Suburban Amateur Football League. I am also served on the board for the baseball team. But what I've also been doing for the town of Long Meadow for the past 10 years is serving on your finance committee. I've been a member of the finance committee for the past 10 years, served as the chair of the finance committee for 6 of those. And being as a member of the finance committee has given me real insight into the inner workings of the town, how legislation works in the town, and the experience that I brought on the finance committee, I think I'm going to bring to as a member of the select board. So I'm looking for your vote, and I think I bring a lot of experience from my work on the finance committee, as well as all of my dedication and service to the town and my various roles in coaching and on boards for the various Long Meadow teams. So again, Maury Garrett, and I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, Maury. Dan?
Thanks, Paul. I want to first thank Long Meadow Cable Television, and Paul, also you, for 9 years of service on the select board in Long Meadow. So you know what it's like to be in our shoes, each and every day. So I'm grateful for that. Over the past, my name is Dan Zwirko. Over the past 3 years, I have had the great honor to serve as one of your select board members. 3 years ago, I decided to run for the very first time. If we backtrack, back in 1990, my parents moved to Long Meadow with my sister and both of my sisters and my brother for a better educational opportunity, like many people do in Long Meadow. Great sidewalks, great public safety, great opportunity to raise family. During this past few years, I've really focused on making sure that we have level services for all members of our community, whether you're senior, whether you're a veteran, whether your kids are in school, but also over the years, I had, after graduating at University of Vermont, I came back. When many others were going to the big cities, I came home to further serve our community as Representative Brian Ash's first legislative aide. during this time, it is when I was able to establish significant and relevant relationships that have actually helped me during my first 3 years on the select board. Just to name a few, with the Sheriff's Department, I've been able to lead 2 major cleanups in our green spaces at Wolf Swamp Fields, down at the Meadows. Furthermore, painting project saving the town $50,000 at Blueberry Hill School. So it's these types of relationships that I have brought to the select board from not only from a government perspective and my experience, but also from the private sector in the cybersecurity space, working with Fortune 500 companies on a regular basis, solving critical problems that I have been able to help bring to the table as a select board member. With that being said, again, it's been a great honor. I personally know Maury. I've coached his son in lacrosse. I know Mark. I played lacrosse with your son. And I've gotten to know Shelly. And I just want to say it's been a wonderful campaign so far. We're going to continue to run a positive campaign. And again, it's been an honor to serve you. And I look forward to continue serving. And I respectfully ask for your vote on June 3rd, Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks to everybody, and welcome all the other candidates. My name is, Paul indicated, is Mark Gold, and I'm running for re-election to the Select Board. I'm here today to introduce myself to people who do not already know me, and for those people who do know me, to hopefully get to know me a little bit better. I'm running for re-election because I believe I can uniquely continue to contribute to the progress of the town of Longmeadow. The skills I bring to the position, combined with the experiences I've gained during my tenure on the board, provide me with the knowledge and understanding of the issues that are important to the residents of Longmeadow, and the ability to make progress on resolving all these issues. You know, the number of things that have been accomplished are quite numerous. You know, I could go through a long line, and hopefully through the course of this next hour I'll be able to share some of those with you. People who know me know that we've done things like forwarded the purchase of the streetlights, conversion to LEDs, saving the town about $500,000 a year. Introducing a meals tax, bringing in $220,000 a year. Other things that have been going on that have looked to make significant difference to the finances of the town and to the finances of the individuals. You know, I think that it's important that people understand that the town of Longmeadow is in this for the long haul, and we need to come up with a system that allows us to progress over the multiple years into the future. So, as I said, hopefully I'll take this opportunity to reintroduce myself to the people who do know me, to introduce myself and share some of my achievements with the people who don't know me. And I ask that you vote for me, and ask your friends to vote for me on June 3rd. Thank you.
Shelley?
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. And thank you to the candidates for participating in this forum. I know you've all done it before, but this is my first time. And thank you for all the viewers tuning in. My name is Shelly Maynard-Dewolf, and I've been a proud resident of Longmeadow for 16 years now. I live here with my husband, Damien, and my 2 sons, Aiden and Carter, and we have 2 dogs, Waffles and Dolce. I bring a strong background in not only municipal governance, but in the private sector, with extensive experience in the finance industry. I started my career working for the city of Springfield, where I gained hands-on experience, not only developing budgets, but helping to execute on them. I currently lead an organization of just shy of 1,000 people, which is global, and I successfully manage a $45 million budget, while year over year driving down costs and expenses and improving customer experience. I hold an undergraduate degree in environmental science with a concentration in chemistry, and I have my law degree. I believe and I'm passionate about effective and transparent leadership and having a strong community. I am committed to helping strengthen the town of Longmeadow and helping us continue to be a thriving community that people want to live in. I look forward and appreciate your vote on June 3rd, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the conversation today.
Very good. Thank you, Shelley. All right, so Dan, you get the first question because we're just going to keep going down the road like this. So the question is, what do you believe the top 3 needs of the town are, and how do you think you would be able to address them as a member of the board?
Sure, I appreciate the question. So obviously there's probably way more than 3 issues.
Oh yeah, that's what I said, top 3, yeah, that you think of, yeah.
But certainly a lot of the issues we're currently working on now. I mean, I must say when I first got on the select board, I just couldn't believe the amount of neglect when it came to our infrastructure, to our roads, to our schools. I mean, I walked into the school at Williams Middle School where I attended school, and nothing has changed. So to answer your question, number one, I think really focusing on our schools. That's always been the backbone of our community. That's why, like I mentioned, my family came here. I've watched the upside, and you said you actually didn't come here for the schools.
The only person in Long Meadow didn't come here for the schools, yeah?
But with all seriousness, if our schools fail, our town fails. So the school project's really important. I truly believe in it. I want to thank everyone on the Mass School building group, the committee rather, who's been focused on making sure that we get this done right. So in September, we're going to have a couple more votes for the funding. On September 30th, I believe, should it pass the special town meeting. So schools certainly number one. Also, like I said, infrastructure. Just the other day, we're constantly talking about water, sewer, and infrastructure. So recently we had an assessment done of our water sewer and looking at all of the pipes underground and everything that is needed to be fixed. And the list is millions upon millions of dollars. Each and every year for decades, we've failed as a select board, in my opinion, to set proper water sewer rates to keep up with the work that's needed. It's almost like every couple months we're seeing a new water main break. So one of the things I want to address is our new water sewer rate that is going to come in front of us to make sure that we have enough funds allocated for these projects. Also, roads. I couldn't believe how poor our roads have become over the past few years. One of the things that we did this year was we decided to go big, swing big, and do a bond for $5.1 million, which sounds like a lot, but right now we currently only are spending about $900,000 a year. Now, I do credit some of the past board members like Mr. Foster, who pushed to bring $400,000 a year of capital funding, allocating these funds to our roads, but we needed to go bigger. I get a lot of complaints about potholes all the time, and so we need to do better, and we are going to do better starting here in 2025 with being able to pave more based on this bond.
Okay. Mark?
Thanks, Paul. I look at the town needs, and really, I'm going to get into a couple of categories, and one is finances. And the two areas, parts of finances, is we need more revenue, we need less expenses, and that's easy enough to say, but it's pretty tough to do in a municipality. We're very, very dependent upon tax revenue for our revenue side of it, and yet when we look at what we've been able to do, coming up with new ideas for revenues, such as the meals tax, things that are non-property tax based to help our revenue are very important. I think we need to challenge our town employees, challenge our residents, look for things like, can we rent out land to put in solar facilities, or rent out other facilities to bring in more income. We also need to cut expenses. This whole idea of financing is pretty important to me, and the reason it is because Dan alluded to the fact that there's been terrible neglect over the years, and if you look back, and I've been on the select board for 16 years, we were literally keeping our heads above water for probably 13 of those 16 years. The town was in, I think, Maury, you've used the term, the edge of the cliff, right? And Maury's been on the finance committee, he understands it, to the point where the finance committee at some point came along and said, you can't raise taxes 2.5% every year because we just don't have the tax room. We were literally within just a couple of years of running out of our ability to tax things. So being able to do the critical, keep the schools open and keep the fire department, keep the police going, that was almost the essential part of running the town. And yes, you'd like to put in new roads, and yes, you'd like to replace the trees, and yes, you'd like to do all the water projects, but in fact, when you're struggling to keep the town above water here, sometimes you have to triage these things. So finances are very important to me. The other part that I think that people have neglected, and one of the high priorities of the town, I believe, is to come up with an alternative or subsequent use for the Glenbrook School property. I believe that integrating that with the request for the school, for the new middle school, is going to be very, very important. Why? Because we're looking at a pretty substantial cost of a new middle school. This high school that we're in cost the town $77 million, interest rates 2%. The new middle school may cost, give or take, twice that at twice the interest rates. To sell that to the town needs to have some compensating, here's what we're going to do with the Glenbrook property. Here's how we're going to use that to in any way mitigate the cost or the charge to the town for this middle school. And I think that's been something that's neglected and that we need to pay some attention to. So the whole concept of maintaining the finances of the town, which helps us with all the services, and then addressing the Glenbrook so that we can address the middle school issue is where my priorities would be.
Okay, Shelly?
Thank you. I do agree with Dan and Mark in the sentiment that finances are very important, and they're going to help us prioritize the areas and prioritize those precious budget dollars to help us focus on what makes Longmeadow truly unique and amazing. And for me, I think the three things that jump to mind as a prioritization for us are the schools, not just the facilities, but the education that our children receive here. It's one of the reasons many families move to this town is because of the amazing academic experience. So making sure we're funding our schools, not just the facilities and the maintenance, but also the academic experience our children have. Roads and sidewalks, maintenance of those, it's not just an aesthetic thing for Longmeadow, I believe it's a quality of life. Moving here from Springfield, I immediately noticed the privilege of being able to walk, ride, or run anywhere in town is truly amazing, and not many towns or cities have that, and I think that's really important for us to preserve and focus on. And then public safety. I think everyone in town really enjoys being able to walk, run, and ride their bikes everywhere. To be able to go out in your yard and experience the outdoors and not have to worry about anything. I believe that making sure public safety is a priority for us in this town. I think having, sometimes that requires making difficult decisions. I think, Mark, to your point, we can't do everything. But if I were to tell you what I prioritize, I really think it's paying attention to our finances and focusing on those three areas. I believe those three areas really help make Longmeadow an amazing place to live.
Thank you. Maury?
I'd like to sort of reiterate some of the things that folks have already talked about. But for me, it really boils down to roads, schools, maintenance. And when I talk about maintenance, it's a holistic approach. It's not just maintenance on the roads themselves, but also on our buildings. We have a ton of deferred maintenance that we have. That's a major issue for us, where because the DPW doesn't have the resources to maintain our facilities, these projects are put off. And then when we do finally get to the point where they're at a critical stage, the expense is much greater. So one of the things that we've done on the Finance Committee is stress a new policy, promote a new policy that the Operational Stabilization Fund, the profit being made on that fund is no longer just rolled back into the account, but instead applied to the Capital Stabilization Fund so that it can be used to catch up on that deferred maintenance. We're talking about the roads. I was proud to support. Dan mentioned the $5 million, in excess of $5 million. That and the way I think of it is a surge in road maintenance, because that's something that we need. The just shy of $1 million that we're applying to the roads is not enough to keep up. And we talked to the town manager about this, that the funds that we have cannot keep up with our needs in terms of road maintenance. So one of the things that I want to do is look for ways to continue with those funding surges. There's been some talk about taking out a loan to fund our road maintenance, but the problem is that the road maintenance is an ongoing issue. Those snowplows are going to keep knocking those potholes in the road each and every winter, and we take out a loan to fix the road now, but then what are we going to do when the road is damaged next year? So one of the things we need to do is continue looking for ways to get those surges in funding so that we can continue to make progress on the road maintenance, so that folks aren't just seeing the pothole patches. I mean, DPW just recently patched potholes near along the street where I live, near the Green, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the work that DPW does, but folks don't just want the potholes patched. they want these roads resurfaced so that they're smooth and so that we're not getting the potholes again and again each year. When I talk about maintenance, I'm also talking about our fields. I hear from so many parents, because I'm involved in all these different sports with all these different kids in the town. I hear all the time from the parents about the maintenance of the fields. We have all these wonderful fields in town, and all this wonderful green space, but if it's not maintained, it becomes deteriorated, and we get back to that thing about deferred maintenance, where we have to make a major investment like we did at the Wolf Swamp field, because the field was to the point where, and I think I don't want to misquote you, so Paul, I think you said it was just turned into a crappy field. And at that point, we needed to redo the field because it was unsafe. There were pits and there were holes and the kids were tripping in the potholes in the field, and that's the kind of thing that we can't allow to happen. We have to stay on top of maintenance. It's not just with our roads, it's not just with our fields, it's also with our buildings. We have air quality issues that need to be addressed. We just spent in excess of $900,000 for the chiller. These are the type of things that we need to stay on top of. So I'm going to continue to press, whether it's on the finance committee and then what's on the select board, for us to continue to apply those funds to capital and DPW so that we can stay on top of deferred maintenance and we can stay on top of our road maintenance, because that's so important to the folks in the town. The last thing I want to mention is, Paul, you brought up something that's really important about, yes, about a third of the people in this town are families with children. But there's a substantial potential of people in this town, maybe about 40%, I don't want to misquote, that are seniors or people who are not here necessarily for the schools. Now, of course, we are seniors in the town, they have grandchildren, and we want them to stay in town and watch their grandchildren grow up in our Long Meadow schools. But there are people in this town who, for them, the school is not their only priority. One of the things that's very near and dear to my heart, and one of the things that I supported, was the building of our senior center. Maintenance of that beautiful facility is something that we need to include. We need to make sure that that facility receives the support that it needs, and that we are doing things to keep our seniors in the town. The seniors in the town are paying these high taxes, the same taxes that everyone else pays, but they are not using the tremendous amount of resources that our families with children are using, because they're not using the schools and they're not using the fields that the families with children are. So the seniors are critically important to the funding and financing of this town. And one of the things that Mark mentioned that I absolutely support is the idea of doing something with that Glenbrook property. Once we convert our school over to Williams, our middle school, the Glenbrook property, and what we're going to do. And one of the things that we can do, and I've heard this mentioned on the past, and I think right here on your show, is the possibility of getting a site in this town for senior housing, over 55 housing, to allow our seniors to stay in town, watch their grandchildren grow up, not have to move this town they love. I love this town, they love this town, they want to stay, and seniors need an opportunity, if they so choose, to transition maybe to another location and stay right here in this town and stay part of the tax base of the town and stay part of the residents of the town. So that's one of the things that's also important to me. So again, it really gets back to maintenance, and that is a way that we can protect our finances in the town by not letting the deferred maintenance cost us more long term. And so that's going to be something that I'm going to be focused on.
Okay. I'm getting quoted on my own show. Isn't that amazing? The quote was, sometimes a crappy field is a crappy field.
That's right.
That's right, yeah. Okay, just put it in perspective. All right, the next question, and everybody's kind of touched on it a little bit. So we have we will have a middle school vote coming up in September, right? All right, so the first question, there's a two-part question. Do you support the middle school vote? Secondly, and Maury touched on it, Marky touched on it, should we have a plan for Glenbrook before we go to the polls to vote? That's my question. So do you support it, and then should we go to the polls before we go to the polls, should we have some sort of idea of what we would do at Glenbrook if it passes?
Thanks, Paul. I do support the middle school. All you got to do is take a look in Williams or Glenbrook, and the answer is obvious. It's funny, I was at a party this past weekend with somebody and said, I don't understand. Williams Middle School was perfectly fine when I went there in 1962, and which proves the point. I mean, 60 years ago, and whatever it is. And Williams Middle School is really falling, and Glenbrook is literally falling down. The walls are caving in. So, I support it, but I think people at home need to understand that it doesn't matter whether I support it. Frankly, it doesn't matter a whole lot whether anybody else on this panel supports it. This is a train that's left the station. And not only has it left the station, it's going at 100 miles an hour and it's almost at its destination. And the only thing that needs, as Dan had indicated, is there's 2 votes coming up in September. A town meeting vote to authorize actually a townwide referendum, and a referendum to pay for it. I think it will happen. But as Maury indicated, I think the number, Maury, is only a third of the people in town have children in the school system. A lot of people in town who don't have children in the school system clearly support this school, and I hope they do support the new school. But we're talking about, I'm just estimating that with the high school, I remember it was a $44 million borrow, and it was 2% interest, and they said $350 on the average house. If this school is twice as much money at twice the interest rates, it could be $1,400 per house. Now, I don't know if that is what it's going to be, and I'm not projecting that. I'm just saying, if it's that high, we've got to have something to sell this to the people in town to show them, look, we've given some thought to it. We will mitigate those costs by bringing in additional income through the use of the Glenbrook property. So, Paul, my answer is, I think it's essential in order to get this passed at the referendum that people understand that there's going to be some offset or something done with Glenbrook property. And so the answer is, yes, I support the school. B, the number 2 is I think we must have something in Glenbrook. And the way to do it is to bring together neighbors and involved in, people who are, involved with it, whether they be contractors or other people who have some great ideas, and put something together that doesn't have to be the definitive plan. It needs to be a plan, because a plan is better than what we have right now, which is no plan.
Okay, thank you. Shelly?
Thank you. I do support the new middle school. Both of my children actually went to Glenbrook, and it was falling apart when they went too. I think having the right facilities for our children to learn and grow is really important. So I do support the middle school, and I agree. It is going to, that train has left the station. And I do hope people vote for that in September. I'm not sure we need to have a plan by September, but I do believe we need to have a plan for the Glenbrook site. And I think it's a great idea. I believe in engaging our residents to understand what would they like to see happen, what problems or solutions do we need in town, to the point Mark and Maury made. Not everyone in town has children within the schools, and so that different use, we see how much the adult center is used. What are the other options for Glenbrook? it is such a major decision for a town. I don't think we should rush in to have a definitive decision by September, but I do think we need to bring together a collaborative group, to start to talk about what are the options to use for the Glenbrook site. And I agree. Again, I support the middle school, and I do think we need to figure out how to best use the Glenbrook site.
Okay, thank you. Maury?
So I think the answers to your 2 questions are yes.
Yep.
And no. Yes, meaning I do support the middle school. I wish we'd got it done sooner. My 2 kids are attending Williams, are 6th and 7th grade. So they aren't going to they'll be leaving right when the school is completed, hopefully, if it's completed on schedule. But we still need the school just the same. As everybody on this panel has alluded to, the schools are very important. They are one of the driving factors. In fact, one of the biggest driving factors to get the new families into the town is the quality of the school system, and we need to maintain that. I want to talk, we've talked about the finances of the school, and I think that that's one of the things that even still the select board is going to have a role in working together with the school committee to make sure that that's done in a fiscally sound way. However, one of the things that I hear from folks is the traffic. Folks have a lot of anxiety about that increased traffic. Folks have anxiety about just having a major project in their backyard. And, I want to, I've talked to some of the folks, the movers and shakers that are involved. I attended the forum that we had at, I believe it was at Williams Middle School, that Dan and some others put on so that we could have an opportunity to talk to folks that are going to be working on the school project. And the traffic issue is being looked at, and different options are being considered. So folks should be reassured that that's not something that's being ignored. When we talk, and what that makes me think about is with the Glenbrook project that you asked about. No, I don't think we need to have a decision made before we decide the school, because first of all, the school needs to go forward. We don't want to hold up the project. But secondly, as Shelly referenced, folks have folks that are stakeholders in this, that they need to be heard. We need to hear from them, just like the traffic issue that I mentioned before. Folks are going to want to know what is going to be going in with Glenbrook, and what is going to be the traffic implication, what is going to be the implication on my property values. And so folks need an opportunity to have their voices heard, give that input, so that as a community, we're all behind, or as many as the people in the community are informed, and as many as possible are behind the project, so that we can have a smooth transition to whatever the new site, the new location, the new Glenbrook location, how that's going to look and how that space is going to be utilized. Somebody came up to me at a town meeting, and they said, they asked me about the senior center, and I said I supported it. I supported the senior center being put in, and they said, I was totally against that senior center, but now that it's up, every time I drive past there, the parking lot's packed, and the utilization of that center is past the max. And so now I'm glad we have it. And that's the kind of reaction that I want to have for whatever we decide to do with Glenbrook. For me, my preference is that we look into senior housing, but I definitely want to hear from folks in the town to find out what they want to do there. And once we've had that discussion, that's when it's time to finalize a plan for Glenbrook. But we have to do something with that property. We can't just let it sit.
Thank you. Dan?
Again, I came here in 1990. I went to Center School, Williams Middle School, Long Meadow High School. They were all the old schools. At that time, Center School still was two separate streets. It was cut by Colton Place. But fast forward, when we were going through Mark and I, we walked through the schools at the start of every select board term, and it's fascinating that nothing has changed. I mean, and every month we're talking about a leak in some school's roof or some issue, deferred maintenance that Maury talked about, and we're constantly at town meeting allocating funds to solve these problems. So, but outside of just being able to consolidate and bring our students into one school has a lot of benefits financially, but also for the students and the teachers as well. Currently we have music and band teachers traveling from school to school. It's just not efficient. Glenbrook, there's a lot of safety concerns as well. I think, so I support the schools, but I think it also answers some of the questions when we talk about our fields as well. This is a great opportunity for us to enhance our fields, our green spaces in both of these locations. But going to the second part of the question for Glenbrook, when I knock on doors in the Inverness area, Canterbury, Barbara Lane, that whole section, people are always asking what's going to happen to the school here, what's going to happen, and no one has a good answer. I mean, but I do think that having 55 plus housing is a great idea, and also allows us to potentially save some of the parts of the building, like the basketball court, for example, and allow our seniors to have more areas and space to play pickleball, for example, or basketball. So I think this is a broader discussion in terms of going through the assessment with Fuss and O'Neill that we're doing now with all of our town buildings. But I think to Maury's point, I agree. I ran into a gentleman the other day, and he said, why don't we think about doing a task force where we can have community members, different stakeholders get together and voice their concerns and ideas that make sense. So I hope that answers your question.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
And the reason I asked that question is if you go down to the town dump, or recycle center, as some people like to call it, you can still see DPW utilizing the old DPW site. That was 3 years ago. All right, so we promised town people we'll build a new DPW, that site would be completely cleared and it'd be in the new facility. And we just have a tendency in Long Meadow, the old town hall, to keep building. And that's just to give you a point of reference of why I asked that question, because you can't have things sitting around, especially a big piece of property like Glenbrook. And to all your points you answer, that's a great way to have some offset to the cost of the middle school. And I don't think you're going to have a definitive plan in 2 months, but I think having going down the road of having a plan is really what the issue is, right? I mean, the next question is we're talking about budgets and finance. I think there was a mention at one of the select board meetings of a potential Prop 2.5 override at some point in the next year or 2 years or whatever. You know, the issue is always 80% of our budget is typically salaries, right? And then you have insurances and things like that. And then you're doing the maintenance, which is the very tail end of the budget type of thing, always at the tail end. Do you think that we should have a Prop 2.5 override? Because that's a big red light with a lot of people. And why should we do that? Okay, I mean, I don't know if it's coming, but if it's been mentioned once or twice, then there's probably a potential for it. Would you support that, or would you look not to do that type of thing? Shelly?
I think that's a great question. It's also a difficult question. What I think is important, you're right, that does come up and we often hear about Prop 2.5. I think what would be important for the select board and the finance committee to look at all the finances, the information, the data. I don't have that data in front of me, so I'm not gonna, I guess I wouldn't have a yes or a no at this point in time. I'm a data person. I like to look at information. I do think it's an important assessment for the select board to do for the future of this town. I think it is important for us to figure out how are we going to not only help Long Meadow continue to thrive and grow, but to maintain what we have right now. I think I do this every day in my job. I have a limited amount of money that I have to spend. I run an operation shop, so I don't have the luxury of generating a ton of revenue in an operation shop, but I do have to be very mindful of where I spend that money and prioritize it where it needs to be. I need to make some difficult decisions in order for us to make sure we can service our participants the way they need to be. I think a long-winded way of answering your question is I would need to probably see more data, and I think that's an exercise that takes time and diligence to really understand what is our several-year plan to help ensure that we have the right funding and the budgets to support the town in the way that our residents expect town to be supported.
Okay, thank you. Maury?
So the bottom line answer to your question is no. And here's why. And when I say no, what I mean is on the Prop 2.5 override, I'm gonna give you a straight answer. No. And here's why I say no. One of the reasons is simple practicality. We have to look at things honestly as they are, not as we would wish them to be. And what you know, and what I know, is that we already put that to the residents of the town. We already put the possibility of the override of home rule petition to the residents of Long Meadow, and they voted it down, and it was resoundingly voted down. The people of Long Meadow don't want that. The other issue you have is we have a legislative issue. We cannot, on town meeting, as powerful as town meeting is as a legislative body, we cannot, as town meeting, just vote our way into being excused from Prop 2.5. All we can do is approve a request to our state legislature for them to change state law, either for the entire state or for just an exception for the town of Long Meadow. And any legislator that is going to stand up and advocate for Long Meadow or the state to do away with Prop 2.5 is going to be accused of supporting tax increases, because that's what that would mean. It would mean that we will be able to increase taxes more than the cap that the state has put on us, going back, I think, into the 80s. The 2.5 was passed. On the Finance Committee, one of the things that I'm so proud of on the Finance Committee, one of the major projects that I worked on when I was chair, and Paul, when you were chair, it is what we refer to as the fiscal cliff. And what we established in conjunction and in cooperation support of the then Finance Director, Paul Pasterzik, was setting up a system where we conveyed to the Select Board, and Mark referenced this, and I thank you, Mark, for bringing that up, that what we would tell the Select Board each cycle was, we don't want the taxes raised to 2.5. We would calculate based on a set of assumptions, growth assumptions, how little we could raise the taxes so that the fiscal cliff would at least be always 10 years in front of us. 10 years gap to give us that cushion, so that if we face some sort of financial crisis like a mortgage meltdown or COVID or something that dramatically lowered our property values, we would not hit the fiscal cliff. And the reason we can't hit the fiscal cliff is because it would result in immediate drastic cuts would have to immediately be made, because we wouldn't be able to raise taxes anymore. And there was some line of thought that we should just run into the fiscal cliff, let us reach the cap, and then we would turn the water spigot off and everyone would be forced to make the tough choices. And my feeling about that was, and I voiced this in our Finance Committee meetings adamantly, that would be bad governance. That we needed to start having the departments tighten their belts now and start thinking creatively now, so that we wouldn't be in a situation where we had to make drastic cuts in services all at the same time. We've done it before, and we can do it again. It's going to take discipline, it's going to take creativeness, it's going to take increases in revenue sources, something that I've heard Mark talk about all the time. We need to look for new sources of revenue for the town. I know Dan supports that. I know other folks are supporting increases in revenue, not just increases in revenue, but as Mark has referenced, decreases in spending. We have to, and we can, work within the means that we have. The answer, whether we want to just get rid of our tax ceiling so that we can tax as much as we want and then continue to spend as much as we want, whether we want to do that is irrelevant. Because when I say we, I mean as members of the Select Board and potential members of the Select Board, whether we want to do that is irrelevant. Because the people of Long Meadow have already spoken. They don't want that. And the legislature is not going to vote for a tax increase. The negative press that they would endure to vote for a tax increase just for Long Meadow, the optics of that would be very problematic for anyone in our Massachusetts legislature. So the answer to your question is no. We have to deal with our fiscal situation as it exists, not as we wish it to be, not as a fantasy or some kind of hopeful situation. We have to have our spending and our expenses work within the Prop 2.5 that we have. And that's my position on that.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
Yeah, great question. Certainly comes up all the time, and I'm not sure if you're watching earlier this week at our Select Board meeting, but we actually had our audit finally came through, and it was a positive financial audit. We have good funds in reserve, and looking at the cliff, what I'm seeing is we're still about 8 to 10 years potentially from hitting the cliff that Maury just mentioned. So. We are in good financial standing, but certainly on the Select Board, we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we're spending wisely within our means. And I think a couple other folks had mentioned finding new resources to bring in more funds to the community. You know, a couple years ago, we actually had an opportunity for the property, the church property, and before I was on a Select Board, and I was really disappointed to see members of the Select Board during that time oppose it. And that was 2 years of lost potential revenue for the town of Long Meadow. And the town of Long Meadow losing that type of revenue is difficult. It stings. So now we're in a better situation for development and getting revenue into the town. But to suggest yay or nay on Prop 2.5, and it's kind of a hypothetical scenario, and that's not one that we're going to be seeing for 8 to 10 years. But just the final point would be because Paul, you were involved with some of those conversations, in the early 2000s, where we tens of teachers, a bunch of teachers were going to be laid off. So when you start having that type of impact, police officers, fires, and certain services that get reduced, maybe you do want to have an override, but we're not at that point, luckily. So.
Okay, Mark?
Yeah, thank you. Benefit of going last is I can turn and say what Maury said. But I want to expand on that a little bit because people at home need to understand Prop 2.5. We've talked about it and thrown it around. Everybody thinks they understand Prop 2.5, saying they can't raise my taxes by more than 2.5% year over year. That is not what Proposition 2.5 is. Proposition 2.5 has two parts to it. Part one is the town cannot raise the amount of money it brings in from taxable properties, equal taxable properties, by more than 2.5% from one year to the next. It's called new growth. If there's new buildings coming in, additions coming in, that's all supplemental. So it's like properties cannot go up by more than 2.5% year over year. Part two, which is what Maury referred to, is, and there's an absolute cap on town tax rates of $25. Absolute cap. That does not include debt exclusions, and so our high school bonding and potentially likely our middle school bonding doesn't count for that. So we are already over actually $25. But without that, we're still in the $23-something tax rate range. And that is only because we had some good fortune of having some escalation of property values in the last 3 years. But prior to that, we were where Maury said and others indicated we were just a couple of years away from that fiscal cliff, they call it. And even now, we're really only a small recession, a 5% reduction in property values. Oh, that'll never happen. It's happened in the past. A 5% reduction in property values if there's a recession will immediately cause the town of Long Meadow to have to freeze where we are with our spending. And so, to say we're going to override 2.5, which doesn't override that $25 tax rate, it just allows you to raise it by more, just brings you even closer to that fiscal cliff. I think it would be an error to do that when we need to, pay for it now or pay for it later. At some point, we need to be responsible with what we're spending. We spend a little bit over 65% of our town revenues on the school system. That's direct school department funds. If you add in the costs of health care for teachers and other maintenance in the schools that are all on what I'll call the non-school side, we could be up, we're probably in the 70 to 72% of our cost in schools. So we have, on one side, we want to support the schools and pay for the schools. On the other side, we need to do more maintenance, and we've got this fiscal constraint. So it really, and I used this word earlier and I believe it, it's a triage in the town. And I think the town's been doing a great job. We look at when we've got the fiscal cliff coming, we pull back on some of our variable and optional things that we may not like because we say the trees don't look as good, but we maintain the schools. And other times we've got some money, fine, we're going to spend the money we have. So it really is important that we do this balancing act. I don't believe a 2.5 override is even practical given the fact that we are literally a small recession away from hitting a fiscal cliff that would, you think 10 teachers is bad, we'd be at a lot more teachers and firefighters and libraries and adult center. Every department would be affected, and we can't afford that.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to have a couple more questions before we end here. The select board has one employee that you manage, the town manager. So my question is, because you don't manage department heads, that's under the charter, the town manager's in charge. How do you see you working with the town manager? And you two have experience already, but how do you see working with the town manager, how you try to manage that one employee, and how do you measure the success of that employee that you're dealing with?
Thank you, Paul. So when you say that the select board manages the town manager, and
Per the charter.
Yes.
Yep.
And the town manager has the department heads. I've got some experience with that on the finance committee. One of the things that that we did when we were on the finance committee was meet with the department heads, not to micromanage them, but to get the information so that we could present it to the town. And I don't think there's any harm in the select board checking in with whether it's formally or informally with the department heads, with the town manager's permission, in conjunction with the town manager, to get that information, to make sure that we have that accountability. But the important thing to remember is, and you really hit the nail on the head, Paul, and I know that having worked with you, I know that you're a fan of meeting with the department heads, because we did do that when we were on the finance committee. And I believe that it's not even a matter of belief. The select board is the body that is directly accountable to the voters and the citizens of Long Meadow. They elect us to manage the town manager and to direct, to set the policy, to set the goals, to set the priorities for the town manager. And I think that when you have a good town manager, and I think we have a good town manager, that is knowledgeable, that is capable, there can be sometimes a tendency to not necessarily rubber stamp, but sort of go along and be led by what the town manager's budget is presenting you with, rather than sort of getting into the weeds a little bit and saying, hey, these are the priorities that we want. These are the priorities that the people of the town have told us that they have. And that is what we're going to do as a select board. We are going to steer the ship. We are going to direct the town manager. We are going to set the priorities, and the town manager is going to execute on our behalf. That is how the select board should go about their business. And if that means meeting with respectfully, getting to your town manager and say, hey, look, we want to talk directly to the fire chief, or we want to talk directly to the DPW director. There's nothing wrong with that. And that should be done. That's part of responsible and well-informed governance. And so that is the kind of thing that I would be looking for us to do on the select board.
Okay, thank you. Dan?
Yeah, a great question. So just first things first, I mean, Lynn Simmons is a fantastic town manager. I think now she's been here maybe 4 years or so, and I credit Mark and previous select board members for hiring Lynn. So as you mentioned, we are Lynn's boss. She runs the town. She manages the department heads. But to Maury's point, every year as we start in a new session, I will go and I will meet with the police chief, fire chief, DPW, and just get kind of a lay of the land in terms of how can we help as a select board, because really the select board's responsibility is to drive policy in town, and the town manager helps us kind of stay on track. So what we've done over the past couple of years is have working sessions when we go through our goals for the year. And I know previously boards have done that, but we seem to be more on track with actually delivering to our goals and keeping each other honest. And currently, right now, we actually are in the process of filling out an assessment for the town manager, which we do every single year. And Lynn Simmons has done a great job. She's always open to new ideas, whether it's good or bad. She can help present another side of an opinion on an issue and suggest maybe it might not be a good idea or maybe we could do something else. And that was something I did with Lynn early on. I had talked to our town manager and said, hey, I'm getting a lot of people just during my campaign saying communication is poor across town. We need to enhance communication. She started doing a newsletter, which is phenomenal. It gives out a lot of information monthly. And I kicked around the idea of being in the software space. I wanted to do a mobile application. And this is now pretty much everyone in town has access to our mobile application for alerts, emergencies, paying bills, things like that. So again, we drive the vision and the goals, and she helps keep us kind of in line with reaching our goals.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Paul. Several years ago, I'm going to say it's probably 8-10 years ago, the select board struggled with how do you evaluate the town manager and do feedback to the town manager. And at the time, to some extent right now, I was the only one with what I call corporate experience. We had lawyers and doctors and all that kind of stuff, and I brought in a process that we still use. It's the town manager evaluation form, and as Dan indicated, we're in the process of doing it now, and it evaluates the town manager in 4 particular major categories, which we thought were important and we continue to think are important. The first one is finances, and under finances there's the running the town to the budget, preparing a budget, and those are the 2 major categories, but running the town and just overseeing it. The second one is communications, and the communications is split into 3. Communications up, down, and sideways, and up means to the select board and how well the town manager communicates select board. I think Lynn does a phenomenal job doing that, but she's evaluated on that. How she communicates sideways, which is to within the town and town members, and Dan talked about the systems that she has now for communications and newsletters and such. And the third was communication downward. How does she communicate within the town to subordinates? And so it's that, finances are important, communication is important. The other is her overall management style, management of subordinates. Lynn does a lot of things people don't see. Everything from union contract negotiation to non-union contract negotiation to personnel issues and things like that. That's a third category of this. And finally, the fourth one is the management of assets. We're really concerned about how well the roads are taken care of, how well the buildings are taken care of, things like that. So we measure or evaluate the town manager primarily on those 4 things, and there's subcategories. It comes out there's 10 things when you get to all the subcategories, but it's finances, communication, management of subordinates, and management of assets. But in terms of should we be talking to the department heads, one thing I suspect Dan's learned, I learned, Paul, I know you learned it, and is that when you get elected to select board, you're no longer a citizen in the town of Longmeadow. You can't call up the DPW and ask for a pothole to be replaced or repaired, because they drop everything and repair that pothole. And that's not the way it should be. I should be able to say, gee, it's like everybody else. Can I'm just letting you know that. But the department heads, you're their boss's boss. And it's very important for you to understand that. And so the role we play, in my opinion, is setting policy and not getting involved in operations. And in fact, I know we've had some discussions with other people on the select board and town managers of saying, no, you can't call up such and such a town employee and ask for something, because you're no longer at that same level as, and believe me, plenty of town residents do call up employees and ask for things. But from the select board's point of view, it's a whole different ballgame. And so I really see us as working through the town manager. I think we all should be working through the town manager, setting policies, not operations, and allowing us to get the things done that we talk to. I know I sit down with Lynn once a week. I suspect other people on the select board sit down with her at least that often, or hopefully do that often. And then at the end of the year, when we do this formal feedback, which is public, it's all on our website, people will see what we're writing, it shouldn't be a surprise to her, to us, or to anybody who we write it about.
Thank you. Shelly?
Thank you. Double-edged sword of going last. You get some extra time to think, but you also hear everyone else's answers. So agree, select board's role is to help set the strategy and the the priorities and guide the town manager to execute on that strategy. I think having the assessment is great. One thing that I use regularly all the time, it's for me in my day job, is those key performance indicators. What are we measuring to establish the progress or the success of what the town manager is doing? I think something I'm hearing today that I think there's an opportunity is there is a need for collaboration and partnership across not just the select board, the town manager, but department heads as well. I agree, you can't be calling department heads up directly. Lynn is their boss, but I do believe there is so much power and strength in collaborating and partnering, having joint conversations, making sure everybody's on the same page, making sure everybody understands what the strategy is and what their role is within that strategy. Each department is different, and how are they contributing to achieving that strategy? I think that only bolsters the town manager's position when there's open communication and collaboration across whether you're an elected board or a department head or the town manager. Communication, in my opinion, is so important to driving effective policies and driving a successful strategy. Having that strategy will allow the town manager to pivot and make different decisions and talk with the select board about what that is and what that means to our kind of key performance indicators. I think understanding and measuring the progress of what those goals are really important. Not only measuring and understanding how we're doing achieving that and how the town manager is doing achieving that, but also reporting that out to the residents on a regular basis. So we as residents understand, hey, how are we doing towards this year's plan? How is the town manager? What does the town manager need? What's getting in our way as a town for achieving that strategy that the select board established? So I think that it's a critical role the select board plays in helping to successfully manage and direct our town. I think the town manager role is an extremely challenging role to do. And I think making sure that the select board can be there to support the town manager and ensure that she or he has what they need to do their job. But I think communication is a huge piece of that. And I think making sure the select board communicates collectively with our town manager and our department heads is really important to having that unified approach to managing our town and ensuring our town continues to thrive.
Okay, thank you. All right, so this is the last question, and it's 30,000-foot view question. We have a form of government where the town manager, select board, finance department can propose warrant articles, take a whole year, 2 years worth of planning to do some articles at town meeting. And you go to town meeting and say, and I use the expression, someone throws a hand grenade in the room and blows up the article. And you take 2-3 years worth of work that the town manager has done and you have to readjust it somewhere along the line. Do you think that we have the right, so there was a charter change, I don't know, 15 years ago, some 20 years ago, whatever it was. And the one thing they didn't touch was town meeting. And there's good and bad with town meeting, right? Because the number of people who show up versus the town electorate. Do you think this is the right form of government for Longmeadow, or should we look at something like a charter commission to determine whether or not we have the right form of government after 20 years of doing this? 30,000-foot question.
Am I up?
Yep, you're up.
Okay, all right. Great question. I mean, this question comes up all the time because residents want to understand why is it so difficult that we have to do this twice a year to get things passed. Can't you just decide in the select board? Well, to your point, no, we can't. This is our form of government. But I tend to actually side on our form of government being town meeting because, well, number one, we have an excellent town moderator, being Rebecca Townsend. She's won all sorts of awards in Massachusetts, and I believe she's the best moderator in the Commonwealth. Does an excellent job. But at the town meeting, we just saw this past town meeting how much power our individual citizens can have with citizen petitions. So whether it's a good idea for someone, a bad idea for someone else, if you present on your petition and you're passionate about it and you have positive outcomes for the community and potentially your neighborhood, you have something that might pass. And for years, in Longmeadow, we had a lot of folks did not want to park commercial vehicles overnight in their driveway. A gentleman did his research, gathered his neighbors and like-minded folks, and was able to present and actually have his petition passed at town meeting. So I do believe that that is the best form of government in terms of trying to allow everybody to be welcome and pass a petition or make amendments to the budget. Everyone has a final say. So it's really the power is with the people here in Long Meadow. And I certainly can see, in East Long Meadow on a town council, it might benefit them. There's more commercial. It's much different than Long Meadow. But I do think we've made enhancements too, where we've been able to have you can bring your kids, and your kids could be watched by someone as well while the parents are in voting. So we are trying to make it better, and I know Rebecca Townsend, our moderator, has done a good job holding forums, and also the electronic ballots too. That's something where you don't have to pin your neighbor up against each other not supporting their petition or a certain issue. So I do think that it does have some areas of improvement, but I think it's the best form of government for the town of Long Meadow of around 17,000 people to show up and get your voice heard.
Thank you. Mark?
Thanks, Paul. I'm going to take a slightly different approach. I think that towns and public and people change over time. And I think every 15 or 20 years, we ought to take another look at it. Now, the last time we took a look at it, like you said, Paul, town meeting survived, and maybe it will again. But it is a different town. The town, we have 10,800 voters, something in that neighborhood out of 15,600 residents. Okay? At its peak, this town meeting had 385 or 400 people at it. And to some degree, Dan, you spoke well about the person who came and spoke very eloquently about, I want commercial parking allowed and all that. But ultimately, it was 200 people out of 10,000 voters who decided to change that. And people have heard me say facetiously, I could get 100 people, 100 of my friends, I could get 10 signatures, because it only takes 10 signatures for a citizen's petition at town meeting by state law. And I could require every house in town to be pink with purple polka dots with a significant fine if it wasn't done. And I could pack the town meeting with my friends and potentially get that passed. That's just a shame that could happen. Hopefully it would never happen. But the fact is that we need to look at the 21st century. I like town meeting personally. I think it's good because I show up to town meetings, but very few people do, and that's really a problem, because I get all these people who call me up and say, so now we're going to allow all these commercial I said, you didn't come to town meeting. That's what got voted. And so the issue really needs to be, does town meeting truly represent what the town's doing? In terms of your initial question, Paul, is we work all year or can work for months and months and have somebody come in there and throw the hand grenade in it. You know what? If the hand grenade blows it up, it probably deserves to be blown up. That's kind of my take on it. If somebody finds the flaw that's significant enough that a majority of even the 300 people at town meeting or 500 people at town meeting, whoever shows up, there's a problem. There's a problem, and shame on us for not having figured it out.
Okay. Shelley?
Thank you. I think the form of government we have now is the residents have an amazing amount of power in the town of Long Meadow. To many of the examples here tonight, I could propose a petition, and if I get a number of my fellow residents to vote there it is, it's law. I think there is a benefit to assessing whether or not the town meeting still works for the town of Long Meadow. It is challenging, and I think to many of the comments already today, it's hard for people to make those meetings and to sit for hours. And sometimes people go in, they listen to the one that's important to them, and they leave. There's a lot of decisions and money still left on the table on those agendas, and I think it's worth assessing what would meet the needs of our residents today as a form of government. And the town meeting is a great opportunity to have those community conversations, but I think there's a way for us to modernize that. There's a way for us to engage more of our residents in the process and make sure that our residents can be engaged with that they have the opportunity to hear and voice their opinions on what happens in our town. And the town meeting may not be the best opportunity for that. I think it would be worth looking at that to see what does fit today's needs, what does does fit the majority of the people living within our town, so that we can have an engaged community. I think having an engaged community is a strong community, and we have lots of talented, smart people in town with opinions and who love our town. Making sure their voice is heard is important. And at town meetings, having 300 plus people show up and not everyone even votes on those, I think we don't see the true representation of what people may want or need in town. So I think it's worth looking at what meets the needs of people today, and how can we still give our residents power to have a voice and participate.
Thank you. Maury?
I love town meeting, and I think that the town meeting that we just had was such a great example of so many of the things that make town meeting so special, and make town meeting work, and what the value of our town meeting is. Mark alluded to the work that has been going on for a long amount of time, a long-term plan, and then somebody throws the hand grenade. Well, and that speaks to the need to have people who are on our boards, on our committees, that are working together collaboratively over the course of several years, so that people know what the plans are, so that when it's time for the residents of the town to hear, this is what we've been working on, and this goes back however many years it goes back, and this is why we're doing it. Because Mark is right. If somebody can come into town meeting and blow up the plan, well, then maybe the explanation wasn't there. Maybe we need to take a look at how we presented and how we constructed that legislation. Everybody here is running for select board, and everyone here has the experience of having to rally folks to come to support you at a standout, or to come and vote for you ultimately. And if Shelly has a huge amount of people, as you've seen it at our town meeting and our standouts that are coming out and support her, she did the work to get that, and she deserves to have those people there. And it's the same thing with the articles that you want passed at town meeting. We had our example of our moderator, our excellent moderator, Rebecca. Thank you for mentioning Rebecca, Dan, that all the work that she does. And Dan stands up and reads the articles, Mark stands up and reads the articles, I second the articles, and we get it. Our town meeting moves smoothly. We saw multiple uses of the consent agenda, where we pass multiple articles at the same time, and that gives the residents of the town an opportunity to say, I'm proud when the consent agenda goes through, because it means that the people of the town trust us. It means that they say, okay, we've elected you, our select board, we've elected you to make sure that our town is being run in a competent way, and we came here to vote passionately on the one or two articles that we're passionate about, and the select board did a good job of putting those articles up front so that folks could vote on those and go about their day. And that is an example of a well-run town meeting. We had a resident stand up and present citizens petitions that they put a lot of time and effort into over the course of years, and it go down because the residents of the town sat and considered and decided that they didn't want it. We had the opposite, where a resident came and put a citizen's petition forward, and that succeeded, and many people got up and spoke in favor of it. That is what the purpose of town meeting does. It gives everyone a chance in the town to engage. And I definitely see the benefit, the allure of reducing, of going to maybe something like a town council, because it extends that sort of trust and power from the residents of the town into now a small governing body like a town council. But what I think about is the flip side. We say, at town meeting, a few hundred people can show up and decide the direction of the town. Well, if there's no town meeting, then 6 people can show up and decide the direction of the town. So the people who showed up to town meeting are the people who felt it was important, and they wanted to make their voice heard, and they just wanted to show up to see what was going on. And that's what's so important about the finance committee, to have somebody there that's there to go over the articles on behalf of the members of the town and make sure that people know Another example is we had an article on the warrant that the Finance Committee did not recommend, and it went down because the Finance Committee articulated, here is the reason that you should not support this article. So Finance Committee, the town meeting is not just a rubber stamp. It is a robust and vibrant process. Sometimes we have a lot of people show up to town meeting. Sometimes we don't have as many. But what we do have is participation in the resident, and there is value in that. And I want to make sure that whatever form of government we have, that people feel like their voices are being heard. And town meeting, it's not perfect. I mean, they say democracy is the worst form of government except every single other one that's ever been tried. Town meeting may not be a perfect approach, but it is our approach. And if we're going to change it, we can have the conversation, but I still see value in town meeting. And and I wanted to mention just one more thing, was that the work that on the Finance Committee, the work that Lynn, the town manager, does with us, going over all the articles with us, responding to our questions about the articles. Lynn has always been very responsive, very informative, and that is the kind of thing that I think is important, that the people who are sitting up at the front of that meeting are informed, that they are engaged, that they have the knowledge of where the town has been and where the town is going. And that is the kind of thing that whether we have a town council or we have a town meeting, that we're going to have a government that is serving the best interests of the residents of Long Meadow. So that's my feeling on town meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to go with closing statements. And we're going to wrap this up. And Mark, you're next up. So if you want to, we're going to go around, take a minute or so to talk to the voters, closing statements.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul. And thanks to everybody for showing up here, and thanks to LCTV. I hope that this last hour and a half, something like that, has been has been useful for the people in the town to get to understand who the candidates are. My intent was for those people who knew me and know me, to reinforce my experience, reinforce my level of knowledge, reinforce the progress and the contributions that I have made to the town, and for the people who don't know me, to try to introduce those. Again, talking about the things that I have accomplished. I have the proven track record of working for the town to bring in additional revenue, to help reduce costs, to help negotiate contracts that unfortunately our town purchasing department, they're not in the business of negotiating. They're in the business of assigning. Just as an aside, our purchasing department is intended to send out a request for proposal, get them back in, look at the lowest bid and award the contract. But for trash hauling, trash collecting and trash disposal, the state allows you to negotiate. And so, people like Chad Thompson in our purchasing department said, I don't have those skills. And he turned to me, who I do have those skills, and we've been able to bring significant cost reduction. The current contract that starts on July 1st of this year will save the town $2 million relative to not doing the system that we had previously done. So, my skills, my capabilities, my experience are something that I've demonstrated, I will continue to demonstrate, and I hope that the people who are home and listening to this recording and this program will see that my experience is valuable. I hate to say this, but probably more experience than everybody else on the select board, the town manager and the CFO combined, just in my years on the select board, and where it's pretty close to that. And I think there's value to that. The value is institutional knowledge, but the value is also knowing what we can do, what we can't do, understanding Prop 2.5, things like that. So I ask for people's support. I ask for your vote. I ask for you to talk to your neighbors and let them know that you've heard me and you understand what I'm doing, and that you do support me, and ask that they also support me. So thank you very much.
Shelly?
Thank you. Thank you, Paul, for hosting this. This has been great, and thank you for the candidates for participating. I'm running for select board because I believe in responsible leadership. I believe in transparent decision making and having an engaged community. I believe having all three of those things makes for a stronger community. With 16 years rooted in this town, I understand the importance of preserving how amazing Longmeadow is. I also understand the importance of thoughtful and effective planning for our future. I bring a unique combination of private and public sector experience, whether it was working for the city of Springfield for a little over 10 years and helping to develop and execute on balancing that budget, or to the team I'm leading now and managing a $45 million budget while delivering results both in cost savings and improving services. But more than that, I'm a mom, I'm a neighbor, I'm a resident, and I'm someone who deeply cares about my community. I believe that having a fresh perspective and a difference of opinion and a diverse viewpoint on the board is really important, and it will only make our town stronger. I will listen, I will collaborate, I will work tirelessly to help ensure that our community and our town continues to thrive for generations to come. I would be absolutely honored to have your vote on June 3rd, and thank you.
Very good. Maury?
Okay. Yeah. So from my service to the town as the president of youth football to my 10 years on the finance committee, from moving here in 2013, I have hit boots on the ground dedicated to Longmeadow. I love Longmeadow. Longmeadow's my home, and that is why I'm running for select board. I'm running for select board because I believe that my many years of experience put me in a unique situation to represent the wants, the needs, the aspirations of the people of Longmeadow. I've got my finger on the pulse from my dedication to the senior center, to my dedication to coaching your children, to my dedication to serving on your finance committee. I have as a father of 3 kids attending Longmeadow school system, I have my finger on the pulse of all the aspects of the town. I know where we've been, I know where we want to be headed, and that is what I'm going to be dedicated towards continuing to serve you, continuing to serve Longmeadow, and I'm asking for your vote on June 3rd. My name is Maury Garrett, and I'm running for select board. So please come out and vote for me on June 3rd, and tell your friends and your loved ones to do so as well. Thank you.
Very good. Dan, want to wrap it up?
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, LCTV. Thanks, Maury, Mark, Shelly. Like I said earlier, stepping up to serve your community is really an awesome thing to do, and time consuming, and you need to have thick skin. I've certainly learned a lot over the past few years as serving as vice chair, currently as the clerk as well. Again, bringing those relationships from government experience, working for State Representative Brian Ash, building on the relationships within the community and the town, our residents. And I'm someone who's really hands-on type of select board member, where if there's an issue with trash, if there's an issue with roads, I will literally go out and meet with neighbors, talk to them, knock on their door, and people are surprised at the level of engagement that I'm showing them. But that's just how I've always been working in government, and fast forward 13 years working in the private sector, leveraging my negotiations with Fortune 500 companies, played a major role when we were able to get back $400,000 in a payout for a DPW settlement at the old, where the current DPW site is now, which used to be tennis courts. So these are just a couple of the experiences that I bring. I think that's a unique perspective, and I want to continue to do the work. I really enjoy the work. I enjoy the board. I enjoy our town manager, and at the end of the day, I love Longmeadow, and I want to continue to make Longmeadow a special place to grow up, to live, to work, and to play. Thank you so much for your continued support. We're going to continue to run a positive campaign. I wish everyone luck. I think no matter what happens, we're going to be in good shape, and really appreciate everyone listening today. I respectfully ask for your vote on Tuesday, June 3rd. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. I think you guys did great answers to the questions. Folks, you have a choice. If you don't go vote, you can't complain. At least you can get to do that if you vote. So go out on June 3rd. Polls open at 7 o'clock at the Community House. Go till 8 p.m. And you heard these candidates, you heard some answers that came from each of them. Hopefully you got to know them a little bit better. And if you have more questions, contact them and ask them where they are. If you have a specific something that I didn't ask, let them know. And I want to thank you again for coming here. Thank LCTV for hosting us, and have a great day. Thank you.